Hey guys, it's Brandon, your GTA home guy, and today we're going to talk about downturns in the market and what you can do if you have to enter the market at that inopportune time. This video specifically is for sellers because we know that buyers entering a market that when there's a downturn is a good idea, so we're just going to help out the ones that need help. As always, there's going to be timestamps in the description so that you can find the content you really want. As well, please stop the video right now so you don't miss a darn thing. Subscribe. I need subscribers. I want you to be one of them because I want to tell you all this cool stuff that's coming. And as always, there's going to be a bonus at the end of the video that you do not want to miss. If you have a home and you're going to sell a home, you need to stay tuned for that. Last thing, if you could share this video, you'd be doing me a huge favor as well, and you owe me one, right? When there's a downturn in the market, as a seller, you don't want to sell. That's a very obvious statement, but there are 3 reasons that you might have to sell, and that's not great. So how do we enter the market the best when we have to sell? Let's talk about that. Now, all 3 of these subjects are about loss, so we don't want to keep losing after we've lost, correct? Well, I'm going to tell you some really good tips and things to consider so that we can minimize the loss. The first of those losses, unfortunately, somebody's passing away. When somebody dies, there are a lot of things to consider. I know that the house is a big portion of it, but we want to make sure that if you have to put the home on the market because of a negative situation like that, that we minimize the impact and the stress that you're going through. How do we do that? We consider the things that you absolutely must consider. We don't waste a lot of time trying to figure things out. We go to a professional who is very adept at making sure that this process goes seamlessly. That brings me to the first thing, is sourcing the right agent, somebody who has skill. And I'm not only talking skill in selling houses. Hey, I sell 1 million houses a week. That's not it. You need somebody who is going to be attentive to your situation, because the biggest thing that you don't need is somebody who's the most important thing on their mind is getting a commission check. You want somebody who's going to be flexible, help you through this, because you're grieving at the same time as trying to deal with the reality that have been thrust upon you. So make sure you have somebody with compassion, looking after your needs, not somebody who's going to bark orders at you and tell you, oh, you got to get this out there, get that gone, you know, all that sort of stuff. Deal with the right person. Something else to consider are the needs or capabilities of the estate. When I say that, a lot of times there might be extra money in the estate for things that you could renovate or fix the place up prior to disposition of the property. But you want to make sure that those things are going to have value, and again, engaging that right agent is going to give you the confidence of the things that you could do. I remember when my family had to deal with something like that, they were thinking about potentially renovating things. They brought in a skilled agent in the area where that home was, and what they found out was, no, everybody who's going to be buying in this area is just going to look to tear this property down. So don't waste thousands of dollars on new flooring or a new roof or a new furnace just to find out that it was leveled the day that it was taken over. Last on this is getting your legal requirements in focus. You don't want to be doing something that could be later contested or something that is going to get you in legal hot water with others who have a portion of the estate. So make sure that you discuss with your lawyer how probate works, how all of the other things work, so that everything can be settled appropriately and with as little friction as possible. Because again, going through the stress and heartache at the same time as trying to deal with something logistical, it can just exacerbate the overwhelming feeling that you get. And the next area of loss that could have you thrust into a market that you don't want to be selling in is divorce. Unfortunately, it's a huge reality. A lot of marital breakdowns end up having to displace property. So how do we do that in an effective way? Big key is assessing how volatile the situation is. You know where you're at as far as a relationship goes. Are you able to be civil to each other? Can you agree on things if it has logic to it? Is there going to be a situation where foreseeably in the future the other person is going to dig in their heels? If that's the case, if there's somebody in this relationship, or both of you for that matter, that just can't agree, it's better to get things done quickly. I've dealt with a lot of situations where people were going through hard times, and trust me, if it's really bad at the start, it may not get better. So you're going to want to free yourself of any obligations there and just move on. And a similar point to the other one is you need to have the right agent. Somebody who is adept at dealing with the situation and not getting involved in dispute. Because if somebody comes into the situation and you feel like, or your ex feels like they're taking one side or the other, that agent is going to lose their effectiveness in communicating with you both. In that regard, make sure that you trust somebody as your agent who is not going to be biased and who also isn't going to try and just play both sides of the fence. The reason is, if there's some sort of animosity, again, it can spark a tension that maybe wasn't there in the first place and cause that process to slow down. There are numerous times where I've heard of people who have used agents and the agents kind of mingled in there and things got really messy, and then it resulted in the person digging in their heels and having to get court orders for the property to be sold. Last thing I want to mention on this point, and there's so many things, so please, any topic that I talk about, feel free to reach out, talk to me in depth. I have a whole divorce care plan where I take both parties and make sure that they're fully on track and engaged in the process, but keep them separate enough so that they don't have that friction between them. So please do reach out, a lot more resources for you. But the last point that I have to say is that maybe there's a chance for one partner to buy the other one out. That does have a lot of requirements to go with it. Many times fiscally it might not be possible, but please do know all of your options. That would be talking to somebody who is a mortgage pro or who has a lot more financial knowledge of situations and how to make things work. Myself, I do pride myself on having that sort of background knowledge. I'll still refer you to the pro, but I can give you a quick assessment as to what your situation and capacity may be, and I'll tell you exactly who to talk to. So if you're having a hard time, you're dealing with loss in any way, shape, or form, and it needs to affect the property, please reach out. You know I at least care, and then I can send you to the right people. And the last area of loss I want to talk about is job loss. And unfortunately, I hate the timing of release of this video because it is during COVID, and I know many of you may be struggling with this, but hopefully it helps. I'm not trying to capitalize on that. I just need to get the information out there so that you know what your recourse is. With job loss, the one big thing that you need to realize is, since there was this unprecedented move by the banks to forego payments for a while just so that you'd have the ability to keep your home, that's something that they extend to you in non-COVID times as well. It's not as commonly broadcast, but banks are not in the desired market of owning real estate. They like to own debt on real estate, secured through real estate rather. So you need to know that they don't want your home. They will work with you on your payments so that you can get something affordable. Yes, it's going to negatively impact your credit. However, you get to keep your home. And a little side note about that impacting the credit: if you want to get out of your home so that it doesn't negatively impact your credit so that one day you could buy again, there is good to that. And you want to do that if you don't think you can weather the storm with your home. You'd rather get out with at least your credit intact so that you can pursue things, or maybe you need to remove equity, that sort of thing. There are a lot of financing and lending options. What we need to know, though, is the next big point. How long are you able to sustain your reduced lifestyle? Obviously, you're going to be making budget adjustments, trying to save wherever you can if you don't have a bunch of savings, but how long do you have? Knowing that time horizon can give us solid clarity as to what you can do. And I implore you, please do not stop thinking about it just because it's a stressor for you. Deal with it in advance and it will be a far less impact for stress, okay? I've seen a lot of people go through hard times and they just kind of try to ignore it and wait and think, oh, hopefully it'll fix itself. It doesn't fix itself. So I know you're going to be looking for jobs, you're going to be trying to figure things out, you're going to get things in place financially, but the worst, and remember, I've worked for a bank before, the very worst thing you can do for yourself and your lending capacity is wait. True story. Because I saw people coming in for credit applications that needed money. Banks are in the habit of lending money when you don't need it. They do not want to lend money if you do need it. Does that make sense? They think they can collect something from you if you're gainfully employed and all that sort of thing. So getting on your feet fast can make the difference between getting lending or not. Because some banks will lend to you, some other types of lenders will lend to you. Just make sure that you know what your options are fast. Now, the only other reason that you might have to make a shift in a market that is turned down is if your job relocates. I didn't include that in the losses just because it's not a loss, you're just having to move. My question is, do you have to sell the property? Can you keep it as a rental? Do you have the things in place so that you're able to manage something from a distance? If you don't, if you need good services, need to find a way to make that happen, I'm very resourceful and I can help you out. Don't worry about that. I think keeping something in a down market is better than cashing out at a loss. Questions? How much time do you have? Whatever it is, whatever the loss, how much time do you have? Isolate that, and once you have that knowledge, you know what your plan has to be. You know what the deadline is, how far you can stretch it before you have to make a decision. So work that timeline out first. Second, how much liquid cash do you have to improve the home if needed? Third, are improvements absolutely necessary to make sure that you can offload the property? Fourth, is there going to be tax implications for improving this property that might make it not worthwhile? Well, that's it for today, guys. Please, please, please do me a favor and subscribe. Oh, hey, you're looking at this video right now and you're thinking, Brandon, I was just about to subscribe, but I think you've got some more to say because it looks like the time is still a little bit longer. What's he gonna do? It's bonus time, and you would have known that had you already subscribed. So do it, just really quick. Do it somewhere. I think maybe over here, maybe over here. I don't know, it's somewhere, just subscribe. So what are we gonna talk about for the bonus? Guess what, guys? That whole video that I just did, and you watched all the way through to this, forget everything I just said. It was a load of crap if you're upgrading. That's right, if you have to sell so that you can buy another property in the same marketplace, do it in a downturn. Find that value for the next place because it's going to be higher. Does that make sense? The proportion of equity loss in a downturn is bigger for properties that cost more. So let's say you're looking at something you're gonna sell for $600 and you're looking to buy for $1 million. Well, you're gonna get a lot better home at the $1 million mark than you would have if it was a higher market. Does that make sense? You're going to save more, so that $1 million home would have cost $1.25 before, but it costs $1 million, whereas your $600,000 home would have sold for $650 before. Does that make sense? There's only a $50,000 bump there where there's $250,000 when you're going up to a higher place. So take advantage of that equity decrease and move up in a stale market. Yes, your home's gonna be harder to offload as well, but taking a loss on the lower valued item can gain you substantially when the market rebounds, and it always does. Real estate is like a rubber ball that you're throwing down at the ground. You see it tumbling hard, but it's gonna bounce up so much higher because of that pressure pushing it up when it recovers. Always has. So, unless there's a situation where something terrible goes wrong that we can't ever predict, and we aren't even seeing it in coronavirus, then we know real estate is a good, sound investment for the long term. So remember, you only lose when you cash out. Does that make sense? If the market's a downturn and you cash out and say, nope, skip it, I'm renting, then you've lost. You've realized the loss in your investment. But if you hold on to it long enough, it's going to gain again and you're going to be square and back on track. I've heard of a lot of people that end up cashing out or worse, canceling contracts because they thought, oh, the market downturn and I cancel, I can't, whatever. They do that, they lose their deposit, and it's like, hey, if you just went through with that transaction and kept the property for a while, you'd be back on track. But instead they realize their loss instantly. Point is, don't fear market volatility. It's not worth it. If you are looking at it like stocks, you don't have to worry. It's not like Enron. It's not just gonna crash and never come back. One caveat to that whole little segment there is just letting you know that unfortunately, if you're cashing out of a downturn market and moving to a different market, unfortunately, that's not the same thing. You are, in fact, cashing out at that local market and buying back into something else. So don't think that, oh, just because I'm gonna buy again, I'm gonna make money on this and it's gonna be fine. Not necessarily true. It's always better to cash out and buy back into the same sort of market so that you can be assured that the value comparison is the same. It's like trading things in kind. Anyway, guys, if you have any questions, reach out on any social, anytime. Where? That's right, at GTAHomeGuy. We'll talk then.
Marital and any social at GTAHomeGuy. I did that.